Man, guys, I tell you, man, what is it about this Cleveland Browns media that they won't lay off of Shedeur Sanders? Now we got another Cleveland Browns insider slash reporter moving the goalposts, saying something about Shedeur Sanders, and he gets called out for it. You are now tuned into a brand new episode of the Simply Ball Dropping Podcast. I'm your host and the man behind the mic, K Sap. Well, today, man, we got to talk about it, man, because this Cleveland Browns reporter, he got exposed for what he said about Shedeur Sanders. And we're going to talk about it right after this.
Let me put you on game. These other podcasts out here talking they but ain't repping the same. It's my bro K-Sap, chopping up topics for your optics. From politics to your top picks. Tune in, you gotta watch this. Exclusive material for your radio, stereo, pumping high definition. Stop what you doing and listen. We smashing all competition. You better jump on this wave. Somebody pass me a mic, man, I got something to say.
Well, guys, you know I got something to say, man. So check this out, man. So on ESPN Cleveland 92.3 The Fan, they was having this discussion talking about Shedeur Sanders. And why is Shedeur Sanders still in the news, man? Football season is over. And they still talking about a fifth round pick in Shedeur Sanders. Any chance that the Cleveland Browns media slash these reporters get a chance to talk about Shedeur Sanders and undermine what Shedeur Sanders brings to the table and start hating on him. And then you got certain people that will call these reporters out and call these insiders out. So I don't know what the issue it is, what they have with Shedeur Sanders. And like I've told you, we produce many shows. The Cleveland media and these insiders want anybody but Shedeur Sanders to be the quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. Now we know Todd Monken has took over the head coaching, reins ever since they let Kevin Stefanski go. Kevin Stefanski went to the Atlanta Falcons, took Tommy Reese over there with him. And, Todd Monken is building out his staff. Jim Schwartz left. Jim Schwartz, he felt that he was slighted because he wanted the head coaching job. And I think a lot of people in the Cleveland media wanted Jim Schwartz to get the head coaching job as well. So what that brings is a head coach in Todd Monken that loves Shedeur Sanders, tried to recruit Shedeur Sanders coming out of high school when Todd Monken was the offensive coordinator for the Georgia Bulldogs, and he wanted to recruit Shedeur Sanders. Then Todd Monken goes off to the NFL, and he's the offensive coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens. And in last year's draft, Todd Monken made it abundantly clear that he wanted Shedeur Sanders because in a little intertwine that Shedeur Sanders and Todd Monken had when Todd Monken took the reins of the new head coach of the Cleveland Browns, Todd Monken looked at Shedeur Sanders and said, "We tried to draft your ass last year." And look how stuff comes full circle. So Todd Monken really likes Shedeur Sanders and what Shedeur Sanders can bring to the table. So now you got these Cleveland insiders that really don't want nothing to do with Shedeur Sanders. So they find anything that they can do to undermine Shedeur Sanders and hate on Shedeur Sanders for what Shedeur Sanders brings to the table. Now we saw plenty of reports that a lot of Cleveland media, they talking about Malik Willis. They should sign Malik Willis. First it was Kirk Cousins because Kevin Stefanski is going to let Kirk Cousins walk from the Atlanta Falcons. And they said, why don't you bring in a veteran like Kirk Cousins? And then also, now you got the likes of Malik Willis thrown in the equation to be a starter over Shedeur Sanders. What type of asinine stuff is that? We know hands down that Shedeur Sanders is the better quarterback than Malik Willis. What Malik Willis has displayed in his 5 years in the NFL, he was drafted by the Tennessee Titans, never got a chance with the Tennessee Titans, and now he's a backup cornerback for the Green Bay Packers. So now in free agency, they say, why don't you go out there and get somebody like a Malik Willis? Well, you got to pay Malik Willis if you're going to go out there and get him. But you got a $90 million quarterback on the sideline in Deshaun Watson. Or should I say a $40 billion quarterback on the sideline in Deshaun Watson, the way Michael Parsons told Myles Garrett on their sit down at the Pro Bowl. So everybody wants to bring in all these quarterbacks, but you got your quarterback in Shedeur Sanders. Give Shedeur Sanders a chance to go out there and prove himself that he is a quarterback one in the NFL. But you got these Cleveland Brown insiders and his media personnel just undermining anything that Shedeur Sanders does. So on 92.3 The Fan, Tony Grossi was talking, and there was a question asked, and Jake Trotter asked a question to Tony Grossi, and Jake Trotter brought out this QBR. He goes all the way back in the days, moving the goalposts like everybody has done, just like Jason Lloyd moved the goalposts against Shedeur Sanders and was called out by G. Bush on UCSS. And now Jake Trotter is doing the same thing, just straight up hating on Shedeur Sanders. So guys, take a listen to what, Jake Trotter and Tony Grossi was talking about. And it's kind of funny how these guys want to move the goalposts, and then he gets called out in a major way, and it was just classic. Let's take a listen.
Where are you at with Shedeur? If you go back and look at QBR, going back to 2006, Shedeur has the second worst single season QBR of any quarterback in the NFL. How much do you put that on him and his potential versus offensive scheme and supporting cast? And how does that impact the way you think about him going forward?
I think we need to see more. And plus you have Monken, a new system and a new coach. The offensive line.
And a coach who likes Shedeur coming out of the draft, clearly. I mean, Baltimore tried to take him.
So you owe it to see that through. But after this year, you'll know whether Shedeur's the guy.
I heard what, man, they had to say, man. And he brought out a QBR stat and said Shedeur Sanders is the worst if you go back a decade and you're trying to move the goalposts. But what was so classic about that, he got called out in a major way via Twitter, X. Let's take a look at this tweet. The Dogs of Cleveland replying to ESPN Cleveland and Jake Trotter. QBR is a meaningless made-up stat exclusive to ESPN. To highlight why it's meaningless, they have Shedeur Sanders with a lower QBR than DTR. DTR had 1 touchdown and 10 picks in his career and yet has a higher QBR. DTR was definitely not a better quarterback. That's a silly stat. Now I want y'all to let that sink in, what the Dogs podcast is saying. That stat is silly, and why do they keep using this stat against Shedeur Sanders? And every time they use it, they make themselves look silly. And this is what happens. You get called out. And I'm glad that somebody got called out in this fashion, because Jake Trotter caught red-handedly hating on Shedeur Sanders, man. And this is what they do to try to undermine what Shedeur Sanders brings to the table. They try to use these advanced analytics to judge Shedeur Sanders by not even looking through their own lenses to see how he performs on the football field. They give every other quarterback a chance to develop, but they want to undermine and shit on Shedeur Sanders for his 2025 season, the last 7 games where a lot of people think he performed well, and I'm one of them. He was 3-4 in his starts. His first start against the Las Vegas Raiders was historic. He broke records. Against Tennessee, inside the Super Bowl era, the only rookie quarterback to throw for over 360 yards, 3 passing touchdowns, and 1 rushing touchdown. And the other was Joe Burrow. Make it make sense. This is how they hate on Shedeur Sanders and move the goalposts. But I'm glad they got called out. I see everybody in the comments section, #salute. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, turn your post notifications on so you know every time Simply Ball drops another hot banger. Oh yeah, just in case I forgot. Tell a friend to tell a friend. It might not be for you, but it might be for them. And this is going to wrap up another episode of the Simply Ball Dropping Podcast. I'm your host and the man behind the mic, K-Sap. Guess what? We're going to catch you on the next one. Deuces.
Thanks for listening to the Simply Ball Dropping Podcast. Be sure to subscribe, like, and share on all major platforms.